might do that later again as well. So I'm Ali Oliver. I'm the Chief Executive of a charity called the Youth Sport Trust, privileged to work in partnership with many of the partners on the panel today. And my job is to try and facilitate a bit of a conversation where we dig in a little bit deeper to some of the topics that were in the documentary. But I should introduce the panel first. So you know Issey, you've got to know her through that last hour or so. And Issey, as you know, is a 17-year-old national athlete, a campaigner, an activist, and what I'd call a real change maker, changing the world for the better, and taking action on big social issues. I also want to introduce Dr. Natalie Brown. We heard you as well, Natalie, a researcher from Swansea University, specialist in the menstrual cycle and the relationship with people and how they interact with sport. So, Natalie, we're looking forward to hearing from you later. We've got Kate here, Kate Thornton-Nelsfield, another star of the show, the Chief Executive of the Association for Physical Education. Kate, looking forward to hearing a little bit more about the work that you've been doing with Issey. Anna Kessel, I don't know if she needs any introduction. Many of us in the room know Anna. She is an incredible change maker herself, a journalist, a writer, and another change maker, I would say. So, Anna, it's great to have you on the board. And then we said you saw Tess Howard for Inclusive Sportswear on the screen there, but Tess isn't with us, but Susie Levy MBE is. And Susie's the chair of the Women's Sports Trust. She's also an expert in social change, and she is here very ably representing Inclusive Sportswear today. So couldn't you just welcome the panel, please? Woo, yeah, a bit of whooping and hollering. Good. Okay, so where I think we should start is I think we should just reflect a little bit on what we've just seen before we get into the meat of the conversation. So Issey, I have to come to you first. How does it feel to be splattered all over Oxford Street, for a start? You're up there, I know, in lights as well. And then this audience this evening, the opportunity to have your documentary, your journey, your passion shared with this audience in this way. How does it feel?
Honestly, it's been kind of crazy. I must admit, when I was watching the documentary and hearing myself speak, I was like kind of cringing a little bit because I don't like listening to myself speak. But I think it was great. It was incredible seeing up there and actually being able to see something that I've sort of physically contributed to and physically like made, and being able to say like, look, this is what my work has gone towards.
Yeah. And did you ever imagine that this would be where it'd take you?
Absolutely not. I kind of thought it'd just be a bit more of a smaller project. I definitely didn't think that it would get the attention that it has, which I'm really grateful for, and I just really want to get as many eyes as possible on this issue, so this is why the documentary exists.
Yeah, and just for a little bit of background for people, because when did this mission start?
Probably when I was about 15 years old, so about 2 years ago when I started actually trying to lobby the government and try and make a change to the education curriculum. But I've started trying to raise awareness of this issue from probably when I was about 13 years old, when I first noticed that there were loads of girls in younger age groups, but I looked up to the older age groups and there were basically no girls. So that made me question why there were so many teenage girls dropping out of sports. And it's actually when Anna Kessel came to do a talk at my school when I realised that, no, this is actually an issue. It's not just an observation that I've made, like there is actually stats behind, and there's reasons behind why girls are dropping out of sports, and that sort of kind of kickstarted that drive into me if I wanted to make a change.
Amazing. No, there are lots of young women in the room here today. Take inspiration from that. You're never too young to start changing the world. So you referenced Anna there. So Anna, we've seen kind of a story pan out here, a story that's been told in the media and hopefully will be told more because of what tonight started. And I know you've been involved in various interviews already, Issey, today. And why is it so important that the media get behind these sorts of stories?
Well, it's massively important. I think what's so refreshing about Issey's film is it tells us a different story. So for the longest, I've been in the media for 20 years, and the traditional story about girls in sport is that they don't really like it. And there's lots of reasons why they don't want to get sweaty, and they don't want to mess up their hair, and they need hair dryers and all these sorts of things. And there's another narrative that we have about young people. And, many of you will have heard it, people grumbling in the office, oh, young people, they're difficult, Gen Z, this, that and the other. And I think Issey's film is so beautiful because it challenges both of those things. It sets the record straight about why girls are not engaging with sport. And it also shows us what is so powerful about young people, that actually they can tell us what's happening on the ground. And when they tell the story, it's so much more meaningful and it reaches so many more people than, you know, my generation or older generations, which is what the media traditionally is made up of, a very kind of old establishment way of thinking. And sorry, just to quickly finish, Issey talking about periods so with such courage is amazing. You know, I've worked in big media organisations where people cannot talk about periods, and there's been discussions around the table about, oh, I'm not sure if we could have a red patch because that might look crass, or I'm not sure if we could do a periods campaign because that might be embarrassing. You know, these are really senior, powerful people, and yet here you have 17-year-old Issey making a film and just talking about it with everybody. So, yeah, hats off to you. You can, you know, you can change things. You can change the story.
Absolutely. We were actually talking before, weren't we, about why does it take until today to address some of these issues? And I think what you just pointed out, Anna, is we've kind of got a society that's holding back from speaking about some things, and it's wonderful to see a generation liberated. And also, you've got other people to be really authentic in that as well, speak from the heart and talk about things that perhaps they wouldn't have talked about without the license or the permission that you gave them. So, Kate, you were there. Few times actually, interviewed by Issey, gave Issey the opening to speak at your development day, become an ambassador, and 1 million young people have had the opportunity to see that toolkit. What's happened since the film? How's it going?
Well, first I need to say I'm super proud of Issey and all the work that she's done. This is her journey and her story, and I think what Anna said, it really hits home, and I think that's where Issey's impact's really being felt in the schools, where those young girls' voices are being heard. And I think because it comes from a young person, us as the educators are now starting to listen. I think we reflect on our own practice. I know you and I don't teach anymore, Ali, but we are very much at the forefront of educating those educators that are working with young girls. And I think raising the issues that Issey has raised so powerfully and so beautifully articulated as well, without the stigma attached. She's opened a whole world for all young girls. She's given young girls a voice where we now need to consider their needs. And I think what Issey has started to do is make us think the impact Issey is going to have on this new curriculum is quite astounding, and that will be your legacy.
What a legacy. And Issey, a curriculum is one thing, the training of teachers, and then teachers impacting on what is something like about 8.5, 9 million children in our schools. That's your legacy. So great, let's dig in a little bit more to the barriers. We're going to kind of go on that roller coaster ourselves now as a panel. Let's kind of get into the roller coaster a little bit more. So, Dr. Brown, Natalie, may I call you?
Natalie, please.
Natalie's okay. So Natalie, you're an expert in the menstrual cycle. Talk to us about the impact that has.
It's such a huge impact. You know, Issey, we've spoken so much about it over the past, I think, reflecting 4 or 5 years now, and we see so frequently how actually the menstrual cycle, not just a period, but the actual menstrual cycle can really impact girls, whether that's from a fear of leaking all the way to menstrual cramps or changes in mood or feeling more fatigued. There are so many different factors all related to the changes in hormones, especially when girls first start their period. The first 2 to 3 years is such a roller coaster of hormones settling down, causing so many additional barriers, is probably the right word there, that really affect those girls to stay engaged in physical activity or even feel like it's an option to be able to be physically active.
And in the film, we saw you kind of inviting girls to kind of engage in a conversation. I guess picking up on Anna's point, things that have been taboo before. Do you find that's an easy conversation? How do girls react when you start to engage?
It was something that originally I was just like, you know, I talk about periods every single day. It's something that really doesn't faze me. But it was, you know, what was going to be the perception of those girls? Were they going to be engaged? And it's so refreshing and encouraging that given them the space and the opportunity, they just take it and want to talk, want to be able to share their experiences. But also, you know, Issey's leading the way in this, but I see so many other girls that want to have their voice and ask for, you know, can we learn about this in school? Can we be taught more? Why don't we know? Why, you know, girls so often say, why don't we get told this? Why do I not know why I get menstrual cramps? Or why do I not know how to manage it in PE so I can be active? So it's really refreshing that given the space and the opportunity, they do want to talk about it. And I think, you know, linking from what you've just said there, Kate, listening to their voices and providing the space for them to be able to do that is really essential.
Well, you're doing amazing work. As Kate said, I was a former PE teacher, and I can remember the Tampax lady coming in. Don't know if any of you experienced that. And it was a session where we all just sat in like wonder what was going on, really. It definitely wasn't a conversation, so it's great to see things have moved. And as a woman at the other end of the menstrual cycle, kind of coming towards the menopause, I think we need to talk about that too. But that's a conversation for another day. Izzy, maybe something for your later years. You can get into it.
I'll advise you.
So, Susie, we're talking about barriers, and we heard a lot about uniform, kit, and the way that can inhibit young women and girls feeling right and ready and comfortable to play sport. Tell us a little bit about the Inclusive Sportswear Charter and the work that you're doing with Tess to change the world.
Well, we know that there are multiple barriers, and Izzy, you've done a great job sort of walking us through the thread of why girls drop out of sport. But feeling comfortable in self and feeling comfortable in what you're wearing are paramount in that. And we all know it, boy, girl, whatever you are, everybody knows that when you're feeling good, the likelihood of being good and playing well goes up. Inclusive Sportswear was created by Tess Howard, who you saw on the video there, and she questioned the fact that she was being forced to wear a skirt, and actually scored the gold medal winning Commonwealth Games point wearing a skirt or a skirt and didn't feel comfortable while she was winning the gold medal, and thought, if that's happening to me, what's happening in every school all around the country? So one of those barriers, and the reason why the charter exists, is to get every school in the country, and if you're an educator in the room or a parent in the room, we'd love you signed up, committing to changing an inclusive sportswear policy for girls. So we remove the barrier of color, dark on the bottom, no more white shorts, and we remove the barrier of anything related to whether it's modesty or just choice of what feels good so I can move well. The charter sets up an organization to make it easy, 4 steps, toolkit, everything that you could imagine. And I know we're sitting here today going, yeah, choice. It seems really simple, right? But for those of us of an elder generation, women of a certain age, choice wasn't on the cards. We were forced to wear things that were unbelievably uncomfortable. And we're now seeing a generation of young women who are saying, that can change, and it's about darn time.
Brilliant, well said. And that's from a woman who plays beach volleyball, so you know where it needs to change, very much so. So just coming back to you, Izzy, on the barriers side of things, this whole issue of peer pressure, body image, what it feels like to play sport in a mixed gender group, you know, tell us a little bit about what it feels like to be a teenage young woman today when it feels like the eyes of the world are on you, but certainly the eyes of your peer group.
Yeah, I mean, as a teenage girl, or like just a teenager in general, you can definitely feel a lot more self-conscious about everything, to be honest. And I think that especially at this specific age group, there's this weird kind of pack mentality where if you kind of stray away from the pack, then you're kind of deemed not weird or anything, but you might feel that people are looking down at you or talking weird about you. So I think that being able to have people stand up and share their voice and opinions will encourage other people to stand up and voice their opinions as well. Because once one person does it, then it will encourage more girls to do it as well. But I think there's definitely a lot of social pressures in terms of trying to like hang out with friends. I know I've certainly experienced this myself, where friends will be like, oh, do you want to hang out on Friday after school? I'm like, I don't know. I mean, I've got training Saturday morning. And luckily I'm quite strict with my training schedule, so I do make sure I still get to those Saturday morning sessions. But it can be really hard if you don't have that support network to very easily start dropping out of these training sessions and then replace them with hang out with friends, which is not a bad thing. Obviously, you want to hang out with your friends. Like, this is a great thing to hang out with your friends and everything. But it's making sure that you find that balance. And that can be a very tricky thing for teenage girls to navigate. And there's also the aspect of boys in sporting environments. So a lot of the time in schools, you can't just have a specific area for like just girls. There's going to be boys in the area doing different sports and stuff. And there's, again, a bit of a weird pack mentality where if a boy is watching you or if a boy's in the vicinity, we all suddenly just get really shy and we're like, oh no, I can't do that. No, they might be watching us. But then it just takes one person to just go out there and start actually engaging with the sport fully, that then the rest will follow. So it's sort of trying to break that sort of herd mentality to then get us all engaged.
It's amazing, isn't it? We spend all our time as young people trying to fit in, and then when you grow up and you kind of in the world of work and you have to fight to be noticed, you want to stand out and be different, and how we can kind of encourage that sort of mentality in young people as well, and the impact that they have on their peers, as you are having today, and probably have done all your life actually. So let's move now to how you drive change, how we get change happening. So we've looked at the barriers. You are part of the change. You're a change maker, Issey. But how do we move to more policy change and things? So I'm going to come back to you, Kate. Just talking about schools, we've got a new education secretary. We've just come out of the back of a curriculum and assessment review, which the Department for Education have responded to in a really positive way. Do you want to share a little bit about what your hopes are here about how we can change what's happening?
Yeah, absolutely, Ali. And it's down to people like Issey who have had that voice. We've listened hard over the last 12 months to young people around why they haven't engaged in physical education. And when you and I have stripped things back, and we've talked about this at length, we know that curriculum isn't meeting the needs of every learner. We've become a very sports performance-based curriculum, and we know we've disengaged particularly so many girls and young boys because of the outcome has always been that sports performance. Completely wrong. We know that sport is the outcome for some young people, not everybody. We've got to make sure that physical education experience is positive for every learner, that every learner is equipped with the skills, the confidence, the ability to make a decision about what physical activity they choose to engage in. And this is where you and I particularly have got the moment, alongside people like Issey, to make that change, making sure we create a curriculum that's fully inclusive, that gives a broad and balanced curriculum that's got dance, that's got outdoor education in, that's got athletics in, that's got something for everybody, so everybody finds their thing. And I know you and I have always reflected on our experience as a PE teacher, and I used to reflect, if a child had left me at the age of 16 or 18 and did not know what they were going to participate in beyond the education that they were facing, I'd failed them. Because it's our job to inspire. Physical education is the one opportunity, the one guaranteed opportunity we've got to influence a young person. So that experience has to be right. It's got to meet them where they're at, and it's got to be a positive experience for every young learner, and that's where our work with the educators really needs to come. A curriculum that's fit for purpose and a workforce that can teach it and meet the needs of people like Issey.
Thanks, Kate, and all power at your elbow on that one. And just I'll add on this as someone that's in the thick of it with Kate, trying to shift our curriculum so the outcome of it is healthy, happy young men, young women, but people who understand the importance of being active in their life and why it's an essential part. We only have one body, right? And one brain, and they're both connected. But one of the things that gets my goat, and I just want to talk about it now, is physical education has such a low status in our school. It's the first subject that's cancelled when students are preparing for SATs or exams. No one worries when the sports hall goes out of action for major school events and things like that. It's like it's the easiest subject to miss, and we really need to make sure that young people recognise the subject has value in their lives. And when it gets cancelled from schools, that just sends completely the wrong message, doesn't it? So that's a little bit of change in the curriculum. Anna, I'm going to come back to you. What can the media do more to support change? We've had this amazing summer of sport for women in this country, haven't we, with the Euros again, and the Lionesses doing brilliantly, and then that magnificent World Cup victory by the Red Roses. The media played a big part in helping that storytelling. We heard you talk a bit about why what Issey's doing is important, but what more can the media do?
I think what's really interesting about the media story is for such a long time, mainstream media ignored women's sport and ignored the issues that Issey's been talking about in the film. And when I started out in the media 20 years ago, only 2% of newspaper coverage was about women's sport.
2%.
Of sports newspaper coverage. So you'd open the sports section, only 2%. Really terrible. And that has changed, and there's been some massive shifts. You know, the rights of the WSL and the record fees that they've sold for, the massive numbers on watching the Lionesses or the Red Roses this summer, But I think what's even more exciting than seeing the establishment sort of catch up with things is that the athletes are defining what's happening. So as an establishment, you may have ignored women's rugby. You can't ignore it now. You've got Ilona Mayer on TikTok and Instagram. She's got 5 million followers on Instagram. Ignore her at your peril, because every sports media outlet wants eyes on its screens, wants readers on its coverage. So, you know, in a way, I think social media, as many problems as it has, is kind of democratizing sports media and the stories that we want to tell. And what's brilliant about it is when athletes step up. So Rose Lavelle from the US women's national team saying that she scored the winning World Cup goal in 2019 when she was on her period. And she talked about that really openly. Or Ilona, I think it was just this week, she was talking about her journey with body image from when she was a child to now. And more athletes are talking about more and more personal things, you know, like stress and urinary incontinence. Things, you know, leaking during gymnastics or rugby, really challenging health issues. And the more that athletes talk about it from their massive TikTok platforms, the more accessible and easier for young people to kind of face into those problems and hear about them.
Brilliant. And we know that UK Sport are working on a decade of major events, so we've got lots more opportunities where those elite athletes can tell their stories. Susie, I'm just going to come back to you very quickly. Social change is one of your areas of expertise. Talk to us a little bit about the difference between, I guess, what you're doing with the inclusive sportswear charter, and that's kind of starting as a bottom-up. Where does legislation fit? Where do we need to be reliant on people like Issey to generate a conversation and get a movement for change? And when do we need to really seek government's input in making things legislative?
Well, I think you have to make any change from the bottom up and the top down. And I think legislative change has started, right? We've got new guidance from the Department for Education, and we've got lots of younger individuals asking for change. But I actually think one of the things we have to be really thoughtful of is change doesn't happen by accident. It never does. Social change, absolutely not. Because you're pushing against the grains of normality, what is considered normal and the done thing. And right now, even as we get legislative change, when we change the law or we change the policy, almost nothing changes. So you work so hard to get this big document, this agreement that we should be doing something. And everything I know about change is once the legislation comes in, the sledgehammer of opportunity happens, but all it does is crack. The rest is what we all do, what we as parents do, what we as athletes do, what we as journalists do, what we as sports leaders or psychologists do. We have an entire sort of, each one of us must play a fundamental role in making that systemic change trickle down. So I'll give you an example. British gymnastics changed 3.5 years ago the standards of clothing to make sure girls can and should cover up. Right now, more than 90% of clubs don't know that. So when you've got a change at a level and then the clubs don't know it, then you walk a little girl into gymnastics and her coach says you need to take her shorts off. And I had this happen last week to an 11-year-old. And I quickly sent him the guidance from British Gymnastics. So I guess my point is we need that legislative change, because without it, you don't have the sort of underpinning. But it's not the end, it's the beginning where the rest of us then pick up. Each school, each teacher, each person in this room, we have to work together to make that change happen. And I would bring it back to the athletes and the role modeling. Issey, obviously you are doing incredible role modeling with the conversations you're opening up, but so are lots of the young women in this room. It is the hardest to be the first to be nonconformist, and in particular nonconformist about what you wear at a teenage level. Man, that's hard. And so even for the young role models in here, your ability to go, actually, I'm going to wear those shorts today, or I'm going to be positive about my body today, or I'm going to lead the way. You have just as much of a role as someone like the Department for Education.
Thanks so much, Susie. It's great to tap into your expertise, not just in inclusive sportswear, but as that social change agent as well. So, right, we're on a tight timeline because there's more networking and opportunity to come. So 5 minutes, I'm going to kind of go down the line, no more than kind of 45, 60 seconds each. There is a lot of conversation about this term equal access. And how do we get equal access for girls in sport in the same way that is perceived there is for boys? So Natalie, if there was equal access, describe it for us. What would you see as an academic, as a researcher, as an expert?
That's a big question. For me, that is equal access to female health, well-being and performance within sport. So until we truly understand female health, how that's impacting both sport but also our day-to-day lives, I don't think we'll get to equal access until we fully understand and support both young, anywhere through the pathway, any age, females.
Brilliant. Great way to start us off. It is not girls being able to play sports that were traditionally boys on its own. It's much deeper than that. Kate, what would it look like for you if there was equal access?
Well, I think you know where I'm going to go, and it's definitely a curriculum that meets every learner where they're at. A much broader curriculum that isn't just sport focused, that actually takes the individual needs. We access every type of physical activity. We include lifestyle sports in there, lifestyle activities, things that our girls are actually going to go and want to do as well. So for me, an education curriculum that meets their needs.
Great, thank you. I'm going to come back to you last, Izzy, so hang fire there. Anna, what for you? What's equal access mean for you?
I think equal access for me, I want to interrogate the term equal access. Do we want to take boys and men's sport and just mirror image it and give it equal access for women and girls? I don't think so. I think I want to rethink completely what sport could be. How can we make it even better? How can we make it more joyful, more fun? I think there's a lot that men and boys sport can learn from women and girls. So for me, it's about opening up the whole thing and just really exploring how it could look very different. That would be my view.
Equal doesn't mean the same, does it, when we're talking about different genders? So Susie, Niels?
I think from a kit perspective, it is fundamental choice that every girl in the country is able to wear what makes them feel good, gives them great enjoyment, and keeps them part of a lifetime of movement.
Yeah, brilliant. I love it. I love it. I love the idea that we change to do sport. Why do we change to do sport? Because it's supposed to make it easier for us to do it and more comfortable. Brilliant. So Izzy, young people, they make up 1/3 of the population. They make all of our future. Final word to you. What would equal access look like for you on this journey?
I think for me, it's a world where teenage girls aren't held back from sports because of the effects of puberty. And that's ultimately down to the education curriculum and making sure that teenage girls have the correct education and that we grow up with good body literacy. Because at the moment, we're not educated enough and we're not that confident in our bodies and understanding how everything works. So for me, it's definitely a world where social pressures and a menstrual cycle and all the effects of puberty don't hold teenage girls back anymore, and they can feel free to explore that space for themselves.
Love it. And I love that term, body literacy. We know what numeracy means. We know what language literacy means. Now we need to know what body literacy means too. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, please could you put your hands together and thank our amazing panel. They did really well, and I think we pretty much stuck to time, but I would also just like to say a few words of thanks. I would like to thank Sports Direct and Fraser's Group for this amazing setting that we're in, for Nike, the Active Kids campaign, for supporting all of this, the Association for Physical Education, for getting behind Izzy and making her an ambassador. Thank you to all of you for choosing this evening to wander down Oxford Street, come in here and get involved in this really important, exciting debate. But of course, the biggest thanks of all has to go to our champion and our leader, Izzy. Way to go, Izzy. If you are interested in knowing more, www.isabellekyson.co.uk. And don't forget, if you're doing any social media tonight, don't forget to use the hashtag out of the race. Thank you, everybody. Please enjoy the rest of the evening.